After watching hundreds of theories, studying the lore over and over, listening to the Ultimate Custom Night dialogue a multitude of times, and then finally playing the games for myself, I believe I've actually solved the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's. And trust me, it's going to sound crazy at first, but I need you to stick with me. Let's start at the beginning. The general consensus among the community is that either Charlie, the spirit that goes on to possess the puppet, is the first death in the franchise, as about a revenge against Henry, or that the crying child, who from now on I will refer to as Cece, was the first to die in a tragic accident kickstarting the events of the series. But both of these are wrong. Let me explain why. Something never sat right with me when it comes to how people interpret the Security Puppet minigame. Everything important about it seemed to be exterior to the minigame itself. The possible connection to Midnight Motorist, explaining a bit more how Lefty works, and Charlie's gender. But the minigame itself never contained anything big, despite seemingly being the most important. And you don't really need the minigame to figure out everything it's telling us. The connection to Midnight Motorist could still be interpreted with the FNaF 2 version of the minigame, Lefty's whole deal is explained in the Insanity ending, and Charlie's gender is also retconned in the Completionist ending.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well.
So I took a deeper look into what else was in the minigame, and something dawned on me. The bracelets. Each and every kid within the pizzeria has one of those bracelets. The one Charlie wears is the only one the Security Puppet actually responds to, but the Insanity ending tells us that each of those bracelets emits some kind of unique bracelet code. That way they can be tracked. That is how Lefty lures the puppet in to begin with. The bracelets emit a signal, and a security receiver picks it up and tells the receiver where the bracelet is. It's a tracking device. A different bracelet with a different bracelet code was on every child in the restaurant. It was mandatory, but that doesn't make sense. Why would Fazbear Entertainment have such over-the-top security when as a company they are known to be careless? Unless they had already had issues with children going missing in the past, and needed to be able to track the kids within the restaurant to make sure it doesn't happen again. The Security Puppet minigame even works like how a robot would interpret this kind of thing, ignoring the signals sent out that don't align with the one it's programmed to respond to, with the Security Puppet being made as an extra layer of security to protect specifically Charlie. But that isn't even all, because if this isn't enough to convince you, then let me draw your attention to one often overlooked but deliberately placed detail within the minigame. You see that? Flyers, on the wall of the outside of the building, that look to mainly detail a silhouette of a face. They're missing posters, scattered across the outside of the building, almost as if kids have recently disappeared at the restaurant. Then there is Cece. As FNaF 4 is considered the most confusing and nonsensical game within the franchise, people tend to write off a lot of its oddities, but that comes at a sacrifice of often being incorrect. And one thing people never seem to question about it is why Cece is terrified of the animatronics, or more specifically, Fredbear. Throughout the 7 minigames we play through in FNaF 4, it's made extremely obvious that Cece is afraid of Freddy's. Terrified, even. And we know it isn't the Freddy's cast of characters themselves because he refers to his plushies as his friends, a detail that will be more important later. And he always is followed around by his Fredbear plush, meaning he is specifically terrified of the suits. Now, people generally write this off because of something Scott said during a game theory livestream.
What is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child.
People assume this means that Cece's fears are unfounded, and all a misunderstanding. But the next game in the franchise, Sister Location, actively shows us that his father William may have been using the plushie to either spy on him or talk to him. At the very least, William was keeping him under constant surveillance, and I know why. No, don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way, hurry and leave. What Cece saw was Cassidy, one of the missing children, shoved into the limp Fredbear animatronic. Let me explain. Throughout the game, the Fredbear plush speaks to Cece in a second-person perspective. Everything the plush says aligns with what Cassidy's viewpoint on the current situation would be. It's too late. Hurry the other way and find someone who will help. You know it will happen if he catches you. Cassidy wouldn't want Cece going near the people wearing the animatronic suits because they were killed by someone wearing one. But this doesn't even scratch the surface of things I have to talk about. The what's seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child line is important, because it tells us that whatever Cece saw, he misunderstood. When he would have seen Cassidy's lifeless body within the Fredbear animatronic, he probably would have assumed it ate them. I'm not kidding. If a child saw something like that, they wouldn't go, "Oh, someone shoved my friend inside a suit." They would think that the beloved character ate their friend. This isn't just an assumption either. You ever wonder why Nightmare Fredbear has a huge stomach mouth? Or what about the fact that every single jump scare involves the animatronic eating the player? Or how about how at the climax of the game, Mike and his friends think it's funny to shove Cece inside the mouth of Fredbear? Why? It's because what Cece is afraid of is that Fredbear is going to eat him, and Mike knows this. But for it to make sense, I have to clarify that the Nightmare animatronics do in fact exist in a physical form, as illusions. The books and UCN dialogue hammer this fact home.
This time, there is more than an illusion to fear.
So why the illusions then? It's William doubling down. His son found the corpse of his victim, but he has been given an out. Perpetuate Cece's fear that the animatronics are the ones that did it, and make sure he tells no one. It could also help to explain why what could very possibly be Cassidy inside Golden Freddy would be moved from Freddy's to what's assumed to be Fredbear's family diner. In the case Cece tells anyone what he saw and where, the animatronic in Cassidy's body wouldn't be there anymore. It's also the only minigame in FNaF 4 in which the Fredbear plush doesn't talk to Cece. Also an important thing to point out is how in FNaF 2 we see the puppet give life to each of the animatronics, each one except Golden Freddy. This would make sense if Cassidy's spirit was no longer in the restaurant, instead haunting Cece. Then there is the bite. Cece is bit, and psychic friend Fredbear says some very important things. "You are broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I am still here. I will put you back together." He slowly begins to forget his memories. And Cassidy asks him if despite everything that happened to him, every way his father has attempted to manipulate him, if he even still believes that they are his friends. Because they are his friends. He isn't just forgetting his memories, but he is one by one forgetting his friends. Cassidy last, before forgetting himself. He is broken. His memories are broken. And Cassidy vows to put them back together. Some things are best left forgotten, for now. But Cassidy remembers. Let me paint a picture for you. A company buys out the local diner, Fredbear's Family Diner, previously owned and operated by William Afton, and creates a new restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. One day, Cece's friends are having a birthday party at Freddy's, but William refuses to let him go. William, vengeful and wanting to get the place shut down, then goes to the pizzeria and dresses up in the Spring Bonnie suit, and uses what he already knows about Cece's friends to effectively lure them into the safe room and then kill them. Targeting Susie's dead dog as a point of weakness, he kills and is able to stuff each kid into each animatronic, an effective way of hiding the bodies, but he needs to shove one kid into the Fredbear suit because he killed one too many. Out of curiosity, rather than killing them normally, he springlocks Cassidy. It's a slow and painful death. The animatronic parts puncture their lungs, causing them to be unable to breathe, and cut their vocal cords, and they slowly drown in their own blood. The kids' bodies aren't found, so they are unable to convict anyone, but they have to up security, so they require every kid within the restaurant to wear a bracelet that tracks their location, and Henry installs the security puppet specifically for protecting Charlie. Obviously, however, the news that all his friends went missing at Freddy's reaches Cece, so he starts sneaking out to try and go there and look. William can't just let him go and discover the bodies though, so he begins placing an animatronic outside his window to scare him off of sneaking out. William isn't done though. He failed at getting his revenge, so he returns to the restaurant under the cover of night and rain. Unable to place the animatronic outside as it would break, he has Michael watch Cece. But Michael is irresponsible, and Cece breaks the window and sneaks out. At the same time, William has a stroke of luck. Seeing Charlie locked outside, takes the chance to strike. He leaves the body in the back alley knowing it will be found, but Cece, making it to the restaurant, heads inside and begins looking around. He peeks into the safe room, and after rummaging through the room, he notices Cassidy's body within the Fredbear animatronic. He is terrified and runs away, but not before Cassidy's roaming spirit can latch on to Cece and begin haunting him. He runs home and tells his dad everything, all about how Fredbear ate his friend. William, pissed off but slightly relieved, dismisses him, but doubles down by making illusions to perpetuate Cece's fear. Cassidy, talking through the plushie, tries to remind him that they are his friends, but no matter what they say, they can't get through to him. The illusions paint the animatronics as evil. Charlie, sensing the lost wandering spirits, possesses the puppet so that she can try and help them, first by giving them gifts, but then resorting to ushering the spirits into the animatronics. Mike, noticing his brother is afraid that the animatronics might eat him, takes this as an opportunity to tease and bully him. Cassidy talks Cece through each day, trying to emphasize the importance of staying away from those wearing the suits, but one day Mike takes his bullying too far. He and his friends do to Cece the one thing he is scared of most. They put him in Fredbear's mouth, and just like that, Cece is left in a coma and slowly begins to forget his memories one by one, also forgetting his friends. But Cassidy saw everything happen. Cassidy remembers everything, and vows to put him back together, not just his memories, but also to reunite him with his friends. At the same time, William makes a similar vow, but rather than putting him back together in a symbolic sense, he vows to learn more about possession and create a new form for Cece to inhabit. If the other kids could possess the animatronics, then surely Cece could possess one too. As you may have already picked up, this also explains the events of Midnight Motorist, as the night Cece found Cassidy. And before people say, it's out of his character, or it's out of Mike's character, or why isn't William purple? Well, Cece wouldn't be terrified of Freddy's yet, Mike knowing his friends went missing would kinda feel bad for him, and William isn't a shadowy figure. You play as him, so he isn't purple. As for the hidden mound of dirt, I do have an explanation for that too. But I don't think it's a grave, mainly because there is no gravestone, meaning it would have to be purposely unmarked, aka someone hiding a body, which wouldn't make sense for Cece, Elizabeth, or Mrs. Afton. Personally, I think it's meant to be the entrance to the sister location bunker, just before the animatronics are stored there. It would make sense since we know it's underground, and the bunker would also have to exist before the crying child dies in order for the cameras in the sister location security office to make sense. It would also make sense for Juniors to be Fredbears, or more specifically, the rebranded Fredbears after it was bought out, now turned into a junior location of Fredbears, with the bunker underneath serving as a place to monitor the restaurant and properly designate power to the animatronics. It would also explain why the Springlock suit is down there. And obviously the reason William isn't allowed in is because he's a suspect for the MCI. And another important detail is the fact that the FNaF 4 map is visible on the sister location's power grid, implying that the two locations are connected. Cassidy inside Fredbear being the catalyst for Cece's fears is also supported in UCN.
Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again. Let's see how many times you can be pulled apart. I assure you, I am very real. This time, there is more than an illusion to fear. We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them.
Among the dialogue itself, which is very telling, did you hear that? The nightmarish voice is layered over the voice of what sounds like a child. But all of this doesn't even take into account the Security Logbook, a book Scott Cawthon released that is filled to the brim with lore, most notably Cassidy's name. But there is so much more in this book that is extremely important. What do you remember? Was your favorite childhood toy a plastic purple telephone? Do you remember your name? Do you have dreams? Do any of these toys look familiar to you? Did one of these belong to you? Was your favorite ride the carousel? What do you see? Do you miss them? Does he still talk to you? Is this song familiar to you? The party was for you. These lines paint a striking story. It's Cassidy trying to evoke memories within Cece. Cassidy trying to get them to remember what happened, but the only ones that Cece responds to? I can hear sounds. The party was for me. I'm scared. I can't see. He only responds to the ones concerning the current moment, none of the ones that correlate to memory. But how? Tell me how, if Cece doesn't remember anything, can Cassidy possibly know all of these things? How can they know his favorite childhood toy was a plastic purple telephone? How can they know if any of those toys will be familiar to him? How could they know that he loved the carousel, and how could they know that the Fredbear plush talked to him, unless they themselves were the Fredbear plush? Unless they were his friend? Unless they saw it all happen? Do you miss them? Do you miss your friends? If Cassidy were there while Cece was having the nightmares, they would know how it feels and want to put William through the same torment.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
It is also supported by the absolute confusion that is Nightmare. If Nightmare Fredbear is meant to represent Cassidy, then Nightmare would represent William. Time and time again they are shown to be opposites. whether it's through literal design of their color palettes being swapped, or the fact they appear in opposite doors in UCN, they are clearly meant to be the antithesis of each other. It clarifies why Nightmare is the true final boss of FNaF 4. It's because Nightmare Fredbear isn't the actual villain. William is. He is orchestrating this, the brains behind the operation, and the reason Nightmare is shown to have a brain. In UCN, Nightmare literally says, Nightmare represents William, and the opposite of William is Cassidy. Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, constantly tormenting one another, but both with a similar goal, putting Cece back together. But despite all of this, every single goddamn piece of evidence I have compiled, no matter how compelling this theory is, there is one godforsaken thing that ruins all of it, and supposedly makes none of it possible. Into the Pit, the Fazbear Fright story. For those of you who don't know, Into the Pit has a kid named Oswald go to a place called Jeff's Pizza, which used to be Freddy Fazbear's, and despite being told not to, hops into a ball pit. The ball pit takes him back in time to when Freddy's was still open. Spring Bonnie then lures him into the back of the pizzeria, and he sees 6 dead kids lined up on chairs. He makes a run for it and jumps back into the pit, but Spring Bonnie follows him through. Spring Bonnie then knocks out Oswald's dad and drags him into the pit before jumping out himself and replacing his dad. Everyone else sees Spring Bonnie as Oswald's father, but specifically only Oswald and his cat recognize it isn't him. Oswald then goes back to the pizzeria and is chased by Spring Bonnie, who is attempting to stop him. He fights off Spring Bonnie, killing him, and his dad wakes up. What's the problem with all that? Well, Oswald implies that the time he traveled back to was 1985, and Scott has all but confirmed that Cece dies in 1983. So what? What now? Theory dead, right? No, because that isn't what Scott is telling us with this story. This story actually doubles down on everything I have said up until this point. Let me walk you through the key plot points of the story again. A disobedient kid goes where he isn't supposed to and ends up discovering dead kids, 6 to be exact, in the back room of Freddy Fazbear's. Then, after that, Spring Bonnie takes the place of his dad, and no one can tell except him and his cat. He talks to a black-haired girl named Gabrielle and she inspires confidence in him. He then tries to do something about what has happened, but Spring Bonnie turns nightmarish, growing tons of sharp teeth and attacking him. It's literally the events Cece goes through in the story. He sneaks out, disobeying orders, to go to Freddy's, and goes in the back and finds a dead kid. The reason it's 6 in the book is that it's telling us Charlie is also dead by this point. Cece's dad is literally Spring Bonnie, and no one knows except Cassidy, aka the cat. You could also parallel Cassidy to Gabrielle, as Cassidy is a girl with black hair who tries to inspire bravery in Cece in the FNaF 4 minigames. And of course, finally, to try and prevent Cece from doing anything about it, William, aka Spring Bonnie, haunts and attacks him with nightmarish animatronics with lots of teeth. The point of the story wasn't to tell us that the MCI happened in 1985. It was a red herring, a date that made sense, but wasn't correct, with the true purpose of the book explaining both Midnight Motorist and the events of FNaF 4. And that is where I was going to end this video. But Help Wanted 2 was almost out, so I decided to wait to see if there would be anything in the game that helped to support my theory. And there was. Major spoilers for Help Wanted 2 coming up. In the secret ending for Help Wanted 2, you go through a VR version of Princess Quest after collecting dolls of each of the MCI kids and Charlie. Near the end of the Princess Quest section, you come across the 6 gravestones from the Princess Quest 1 minigame, each with one of the memory dolls next to them. Each grave is also labeled with a certain number of dots. None in front of the grave with Chica, 1 dot on the grave with Foxy, 2 dots on the grave with Freddy, the grave with Bonnie is completely broken and it's unclear, 4 dots, with 1 broken, on the grave for Golden Freddy, and 3 dots with the top half missing for the puppet. While the order you light the VR graves doesn't technically matter, in the original Princess Quest, it does. To solve the puzzle, you have to light the one with 0, then the one with 1, then the one with 2, then the broken one, then the one with 4, and finally the one with 3 dots in the broken top. This order implies the completely broken one has 3 dots, as it comes after the one with 2 and before the one with 4. And that the one with 3 dots and a broken top has 5 dots because it comes last in the sequence. So what does this all mean? It is the order in which the children were killed, with Chica being the first dead kid. Thus, the first in the sequence, and ending with the puppet, as they die after the MCI kids. It also makes sense that Golden Freddy would be the second to last in the sequence, as it makes sense that Cassidy would be the last of the MCI kids to die. I guess it turns out Chica really was the first after all. She really did see everything. This video is already pretty long, so everything else will be explained in a part 2 in which I'll cover how Sister Location and FNaF 2 are a lot more connected than you might think. And then in a part 3, I'll explain FNaF World and Happiest Day and how they tie into everything I've been talking about. Have I solved everything in FNaF? No, but I think I've gained a stronger understanding of a larger part of the story, and if you hear me out through this part, the next part, and the final part, I truly think that I will have, at the very least, mostly solved the story of Five Nights at Freddy's. Thank you for watching. Hold up. Okay. It's currently 4 a.m. I am finishing editing the video, and I realized I missed 2 extremely important details. Sorry if the audio quality sounds a lot worse. I wasn't prepared to do this, and I need to get this video in as soon as possible. But there's 2 things that I completely forgot to mention that are extremely important. First off, the way you get the puppet memory doll in Help Wanted 2 is by putting the numbers 1983 into a keypad, the same keypad in the Sister Location bunker, which, despite the implications of it being in the Sister Location bunker, it implies that Charlie does die in 1983, and if Charlie has to die in 1983, then the MCI kids would also have to die in 1983. The other thing that completely skipped my memory until just now is that they're called memory dolls, or just memories. Whose memories? Cece's. They're the crying child's memories. Holy shit, I don't know how this didn't click sooner, but like, they're the crying child's memories. Like, it's meant to connect back to Happiest. I mean, I'm gonna go more into Happiest Day in a later video, but they're meant to connect to Happiest Day because they look like the characters from Happiest Day, and they are Cece's quote-unquote memories, or at least his memories put back together, which not only confirms that Happiest Day is probably the canon ending of FNaF 3, but also just heavily supports this entire theory. Because who else's memories would they be? It'd have to be Cece's. He is the only one who isn't there, who makes sense. But like, this was just a side tangent. I didn't have any of the scripted. It all just sort of came to me right as I was finishing editing this video. I'm gonna finish editing it and then I'm gonna get it uploaded. But yeah, no, this just, I can't believe I forgot about these 2 things.